Hello, class, and welcome to Chapter 6 on cellular respiration. This is how our cells use energy from food to kind of really power all of the processes in our body cells. There's a lot of details to this chapter, so I'm going to focus on kind of the three main steps of cellular respiration and see if we can get that. So in general, our cells need oxygen and glucose that you get from food to form ATP, which is the energy currency needed to power all of the processes of our cells. And we're going to talk about kind of that energy flow and chemical cycling. All life requires energy. So if we talk about life in general and not just humans, in all ecosystems on Earth, this energy originates from the sun. And we'll talk about photosynthesis in chapter 7. And this is when plants convert the energy of sunlight to the chemical energy of sugars and other organic molecules. And all animals depend on this conversion to get their food and so much more. Plants and other autotrophs, which are self-feeders, are organisms that make all their own organic matter from nutrients that are entirely inorganic. So what plants do is they take carbon dioxide from the air and water and minerals from the soil to create their own matter. Heterotrophs are other feeders. This includes us as humans and other animals. We cannot make our own organic molecules from inorganic ones. Most ecosystems depend entirely on photosynthesis for food, and biologists refer to plants and other autotrophs as producers and heterotrophs, in contrast, as consumers, because they obtain their food by eating the plants or by eating animals that have eaten the plants. So the chemical ingredients for photosynthesis are carbon dioxide and water. CO2 passes from the air into the plant via tiny pores, and water is absorbed from the soil by the plant's roots. Inside the leaf cells, chloroplasts use light energy to rearrange the atoms of these ingredients to produce sugars, most importantly, glucose and other organic molecules. And a byproduct of photosynthesis is oxygen gas. That's why it's really important to have lots of plants in your home, because they help clean and filter the air and produce lots of oxygen. So this is kind of the flow. Photosynthesis uses light, CO2, water to create glucose. And then glucose and oxygen are what our body cells use through a process of cellular respiration to create ATP. And this ATP is what drives all the work of our cells. A byproduct or waste product of cellular respiration is CO2 and water, which is what photosynthesis needs to create glucose. So we have a really nice energy flow and chemical cycling throughout the ecosystems. My kids just watched The Lion King, The Circle of Life, and there's really no other simpler way to state it. So cellular respiration uses O2 to convert energy stored in chemical bonds of sugars to another source of chemical energy called adenosine triphosphate. And the production of ATP during cellular respiration occurs in the mitochondria. The waste products of cellular respiration are CO2 and H2O, which are the same ingredients used for photosynthesis. Understanding this basic flow is something I want you guys to know, and we'll kind of go from there. Plants usually make more organic molecules than they need for fuel, and this surplus provides material for the plant to grow, or it can be stored as starch in potatoes, for example. So cellular respiration is the aerobic harvesting, so in the presence of oxygen, of chemical energy from organic fuel molecules or glucose. And this is the main way that chemical energy is harvested from food and converted to ATP. And again, ATP is what all of our body cells need to function. Without it, we die. It's an aerobic process because it requires oxygen. Cellular respiration requires that a cell exchange two gases with its surroundings. The cell takes in oxygen in the form of gas, and it gets rid of waste as CO2. And that's what we exhale, that CO2, which is a waste product of cellular respiration. It consists of many chemical steps using specific enzymes. It constitutes one of the most important metabolic pathways for nearly every eukaryotic cell, and it provides the energy these cells need to maintain the functions of life. And this is an overview of cellular respiration. It takes glucose, which we get from the food we eat, adds in oxygen to create water and carbon dioxide as a waste product, but it's the approximately 32 ATP formed from one glucose molecule that is what we're trying to get at. These are the three main steps of cellular respiration. And this is what I want you to know. I want you to know these three steps: glycolysis, citric acid cycle, the electron transport chain, and then in general, what happens at each step. But I won't ask you too many details. Glycolysis occurs outside the mitochondria, and then the citric acid cycle and the electron transport chain are the two steps that occur inside the mitochondria. And it's the electron transport chain that produces the most or the majority of ATP. Simply put, glycolysis is when we break apart a glucose into two molecules of pyruvic acid. Pyruvic acid completes the breakdown of glucose all the way to CO2, and the enzymes for the citric acid cycle will be dissolved in the fluid within the mitochondria. So here we have a little bit more detail on glycolysis. It also creates NADH, and this electron transfer forms a molecule called NADH, which acts as a shuttle carrying high energy electrons from one area of the cell to another. This NADH will be really important for the final step of the process, the electron transport chain. Let me pause my recording real quick, guys. The third stage of cellular respiration is that electron transport chain, where we have electrons captured from food by NADH are stripped of their energy a little bit at a time until they are finally combined with oxygen to form water, and the proteins and other molecules that make up the electron transport chains are embedded within the inner membrane of the mitochondria. The electron transport from NADH to oxygen releases the energy your cells use to make the most of their ATP. So the overall equation for cellular respiration shows that the atoms of the reactant molecules glucose and oxygen are rearranged to form the products CO2 and H2O, and the main function of cellular respiration is to generate ATP to do cellular work, and this process can produce around 32 ATP molecules for each glucose molecule consumed. Please watch that video on cellular respiration. So I think I'm going to pause there, because I think if that's all I want you to know for cellular respiration, kind of what happens in those three steps, and majorly what is the purpose of cellular respiration. So I will pause there, and I'll see you for chapter 7.